Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Watch till the end, you will enjoy. The Cold War explained in 10 minutes. The Cold War was one of the most significant conflicts of the 20th century, shaping international politics, economics, and military strategies. It lasted from 1947 to 1991, involving an intense rivalry between two superpowers, the United States, USA, and the Soviet Union, USSR. While it never escalated into direct warfare between the two, the Cold War influenced numerous regional conflicts, ideological battles, and a race for global dominance. In this video, we'll break down the Cold War's key events, major confrontations, and lasting impact, all in just 10 minutes. What was the Cold War? The Cold War, 1947-1991, was a period of political, military, and ideological rivalry between the United States, USA, and the Soviet Union, USSR, along with their respective allies. It was called cold because it did not lead to direct, large-scale war between the two superpowers, but was instead fought through proxy wars, espionage, propaganda, and an arms race. Causes of the Cold War: 1. Ideological differences. OUSA supported capitalism and democracy. OUSSR promoted communism and a one-party system. Both sides wanted to spread their ideologies worldwide. 2. End of World War II, 1945. The defeat of Nazi Germany left the USA and USSR as the world's two superpowers. They had different visions for post-war Europe, especially regarding Germany. So USSR was a two-superpower shock, especially regarding Germany. 3. Nuclear arms race. The USA developed nuclear weapons first, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, 1945. The USSR successfully tested its first atomic bomb in 1949. Both sides built massive stockpiles of nuclear weapons, leading to mutually assured destruction, MAD. 4. Formation of rival alliances. NATO, 1949, led by the USA and Western countries. Warsaw Pact, 1955, and USSR and Eastern European Communist nations. This division created the Eastern Bloc, communist, via Western Bloc, capitalist. Major events of the Cold War: 1. Early conflicts, 1947-1962, Truman Doctrine, 1947, from spreading, containment policy.
Berlin blockade and airlift, 1948-49. USSR blocked West Berlin, USA supplied it via air. Korean War, 1950-1953, USSR backed North Korea. Cuban Missile Crisis, 1962, closest point to nuclear war, when USSR placed missiles in Cuba. Proxy wars and rivalry, 1986. Vietnam War, 1955-1978. USA vs. USSR backed communist forces in Vietnam. Afghanistan War, 1979-1989. USA vs. USSR invaded Afghan rebels, Mujahideen. Space race, 1957-1969. USSR launched Sputnik, 1957, but USSR won by landing on the moon, 1969. Arms race, both sides built nuclear weapons and intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs. Cold War ends, 1985-1991. Mikhail Gorbachev's reforms, 1985-1991. Mikhail Fall of the Berlin Wall, 1989, symbolized the collapse of Soviet influence in Eastern Europe. The Soviet Union collapsed and the Cold War ended. Origins of the Cold War. The seeds of the Cold War were sown during World War II, but tensions escalated after 1945. Yalta and Potsdam conferences. 1945, the USA, USSR, and the UK discussed post-war Europe, but disagreements arose over Germany's future and Soviet influence in Eastern Europe. Iron Curtain speech. 1946, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill warned of an Iron Curtain dividing Europe between Western democracy and Eastern communism. Truman Doctrine, 1947. the U.S. adopted a policy of containment to stop the spread of communism, pledging support to nations resisting Soviet influence. Marshall Plan, 1948, the USA provided $13 billion in aid to rebuild Western Europe, preventing Soviet expansion. Berlin Blockade and Airlift, 1948-1949. The USSR blocked Western access to Berlin, leading to an 11-month airlift operation by the US and allies to supply the city. The arms race and nuclear threat. One of the most defining features of the Cold War was the nuclear arms race. First Soviet atomic bomb, 1949. The USSR successfully tested its first nuclear bomb, ending the US monopoly on atomic weapons.
Superpowers amassed enough nuclear weapons to destroy each other, deterring direct conflict. Intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs. Both nations developed long-range missiles capable of delivering nuclear warheads across continents. The space race. The Cold War wasn't just about military power, it extended into space. Sputnik, 1957. The USSR launched the first satellite, shocking the world and triggering the space race. NASA and moon landing, 1969. Ultimately landing Apollo 11 on the moon in 1969. Strategic defense initiatives. Both superpowers invested heavily in space technology, fearing space-based weapons. The space race was a significant part of the Cold War rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union, with both superpowers racing to demonstrate their technological and scientific superiority. It was a race to explore and dominate space, primarily to prove the strength of each country's political and technological systems. The space race took place from 1957 to 1969, culminating in the United States landing on the moon, but it had major events throughout the 1960s. Key events of the space race: 1. Sputnik and the beginning of the race, 1957. October 4, 1957, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite to orbit the Earth. This was a huge shock to the United States as it showed the USSR had advanced missile and rocket technology capable of reaching space. It marked the beginning of the space race, and the US felt an intense pressure to catch up and prove their technological prowess. 2. America responds. NASA and the space program. In response to Sputnik, the United States established the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, in July 1958, with the goal of advancing space exploration. The US focused on getting into space and ultimately landing a man on the moon. 3. First human in space. 1961, April 12, 1961, Yuri Gagarin, a Soviet cosmonaut, became the first human to journey into space and orbit the Earth aboard Vostok 1. This event gave the Soviet Union a major victory in the space race, demonstrating their advanced space technology. Yuri Gagarin became a national hero in the Soviet Union and an international symbol of Soviet achievement. The U.S. counterattack. John F. Kennedy's vision, 1961, May 25, 1961. In a speech to Congress, President John F. Kennedy set a bold goal for the U.S. to land a man on the moon and return him safely to Earth by the end of the 1960s. Kennedy's challenge was inspired by the desire to show American technological superiority and was also a reaction to the Soviet Union's achievements in space. The Moon Race, Apollo Program. The United States launched the Apollo program, which aimed to land astronauts on the moon and bring them back safely. Apollo 11 was the mission that achieved Kennedy's goal. The Apollo program's success was also seen as a victory in the Cold War context. The moon landing, a giant leap, 1969, July 20, 1969, the United States achieved the ultimate goal of the space race when Apollo 11 astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin became the first humans to walk on the moon, while Michael Collins remained in lunar orbit. Neil Armstrong's famous words, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," were broadcast to millions of people worldwide. Ongoing space exploration. After the moon landing, the Soviet Union never managed to land a human on the moon, but they achieved significant space milestones, such as sending the first woman into space, Valentina Tereshkova, 1963, and launching the first space station, Salyut 1, 1971. The US continued with the Apollo program, including Apollo 13, which famously survived a life-threatening crisis, 1970, and later the Space Shuttle program, 1981. Key outcomes of the space race: technological advancements. The space race led to significant developments in rocket technology, computers, and materials science. Many of these innovations would later impact civilian industries and everyday life, e.g., satellites, and computer technology. Cold War propaganda. Space exploration was seen as a symbolic battle between the two superpowers, and both countries used their achievements in space to promote the superiority of their political and economic systems. International collaboration. After the initial rivalry, space exploration became a platform for international cooperation. For example, in 1972, the Apollo-Soyuz test project was the first international human spaceflight mission where US and Soviet spacecraft docked in space. Shift in global power. While the US may have won the moon race, the broader goals of space exploration evolved beyond the Cold War. In the post-Cold War era, cooperation in space became more common, with joint missions, such as those on the International Space Station, WHS, Major Cold War conflicts. While the US and USSR never fought directly, they engaged in proxy wars around the world. Korean War, 1950-1931, China, ending in a stalemate. Vietnam War, 1955-1975. The US supported South Vietnam against Communist North Vietnam, eventually withdrawing in 1973. Cuban Missile Crisis, 1962, brought the world to the brink of nuclear war before a peaceful resolution. Afghan War, 1979-1989, the USSR invaded Afghanistan. The US supported Afghan rebels, leading to a costly Soviet defeat. The Cold War's global impact. The Cold War shaped international alliances and organizations. NATO, 1949. The US and Western allies formed NATO. The USSR and its allies created a rival military alliance. United Nations. The Cold War influenced UN actions, often leading to deadlocks between US and Soviet interests. The fall of the Soviet Union. By the late 1980s, the USSR faced internal economic struggles and political reforms.
Gorbachev's reforms, 1985. Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev introduced perestroika, economic reforms, and glasnost, openness, to revive the struggling Soviet economy. Fall of the Berlin Wall, 1989. The symbol of communist oppression collapsed, signaling the decline of Soviet influence in Eastern Europe. Dissolution of the USSR, 1991, and political pressure led to the collapse of the Soviet Union, officially ending the Cold War. Conclusion. The Cold War lasted over 4 decades, shaping the modern world in profound ways. It influenced military strategies, technological advancements, and global politics. While the threat of nuclear war loomed over the world, it also led to innovation in space exploration, diplomacy, and economic policies. With the Cold War officially over, its legacy still affects international relations today. The rivalry between major world powers continues, but in new forms through cyber warfare, economic competition, and political influence. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more history content.